It was the kind of photograph that families kept framed above the fireplace. A moment frozen in sepia, a testament to order, power, and pride. Taken in 1931, in a private dining room of Il Cigno Bianco, a little Italian restaurant on Mulberry Street, it showed the men of the Maranzano family gathered around a long mahogany table. 12 of them, suits pressed, ties immaculate, cigars unlit but ready. Behind them, velvet curtains and the faint glimmer of a chandelier. Symbols of a quiet empire that ran beneath New York's surface. Don Raffaele Maranzano sat at the center. His eyes were calm, unreadable, almost priestly. To his right, his consigliere Luca De Laurentiis, his lifelong friend from Palermo. To his left, his nephew Vincenzo, young, ambitious, too quick to smile. It was a picture meant for history until someone noticed the 13th man. He stood near the back, between two lieutenants, half-shadowed, face faintly blurred, as if the camera lens had trembled. No one recognized him. He was not supposed to be there. The photograph remained untouched for years, but when Detective Daniel Russo stumbled upon it in 1958, after the Maranzano case was reopened, it became a ghost of its own. Part 2, The Detective. Russo was a man who had grown up in Little Italy, where silence was law and loyalty was the air you breathed. His father had once worked for the Maranzanos as a driver, never in the inner circle. When the FBI reopened the archives, they handed Russo a dusty box labeled M1931. Inside were ledgers, notes, a revolver with the serial number filed off, and that photograph. He looked at it for a long time. The faces were ghosts from another era. Proud men who ruled the city's docks, distilleries, and speakeasies. Most were dead before 1940, but it was the blurred man in the corner that caught his attention. He looked out of place, not because of the suit. That was fine, dark wool, same as the rest, but because of his eyes. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at Maranzano himself, and there was something in them, a kind of recognition or accusation. Russo pinned the photo to his board. "Let's find out who you are," he muttered. Part 3, The Dinner. But to understand that face, we go back to that night, October 17th, 1931. The air in Il Cigno Bianco smelled of garlic and cigars. Jazz from a gramophone floated faintly from the bar. The city outside was tense. The Castellamarese War had just ended. Salvatore Maranzano had declared himself capo di tutti capi, the boss of all bosses, and tonight's dinner was meant to seal peace among his loyal captains. 12 men came. 13 appeared. Raffaele Maranzano lifted his glass. "To peace," he said, his voice slow, heavy with age. "To family." To the end of blood, glasses clinked. Smiles spread like masks. But Luca De Laurentiis, the consigliere, watched his dawn closely. Raphael had grown paranoid in recent months, whispering about traitors, about ghosts in his own house. Then the door opened, and the 13th man entered. No one called his name. He carried a silver camera. "I'm here for the picture, signori," he said in a careful Italian accent. "From Il Progresso Italo-Americano, the newspaper." Raffaele nodded vaguely. "One picture," he said, "then you leave." The camera flashed once. A small white burst, and history froze. Minutes later, the man was gone. Part 4, The Betrayal. 3 days after this dinner, Raffaele Maranzano was dead, stabbed 6 times in his office. No witnesses, no arrests. Luca De Laurentiis vanished the same night. Rumors swirled that Luca had struck a deal with the new power in town, a man named Luciano, that he had betrayed his friend, the Don, to save himself. But the blurred man in the photo was never mentioned again. Part 5, The ones to search. Back in 1958, Detective Russo took the photo to an expert in the NYPD's photography division. They enlarged the image, sharpened the features. Slowly, the face emerged. Narrow eyes, a thin scar along the jaw, slick hair parted to the left. Russo stared. He'd seen that face before. In another file, another case, a police informant named Lorenzo Cataneo, listed as missing since 1932. Cataneo had been a photographer by trade. Russo's heart sank. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. The photographer who took the picture, the man behind the camera, was also in it. Part 6, The Hidden Truth. He found the last surviving member of the Maranzano circle in a retirement home in New Jersey. Vincenzo Maranzano, the Don's nephew, now 80 and nearly blind. Russo placed the photo before him. "Do you remember this night?" Vincenzo nodded faintly. "Of course. That was the night my uncle toasted peace." "Do you remember this man?" Russo pointed at the blurred face. Vincenzo's eye clouded. "That's impossible. That's Lorenzo." "The photographer?" Vincenzo shook his head slowly. "No. The killer." Part 7. The Confession. According to Vincenzo, Luca De Laurentiis had hired Lorenzo Cataneo to take the photo, but also to deliver a message to Luciano's men. Hidden in the camera's body was a microfilm listing every Maranzano safe house, contact, and cash front. The photograph was the pretext. The real delivery was the betrayal. But Lorenzo made a fatal mistake. He stood in front of his own camera for one last test shot. Raphael noticed him during dinner. He realized the man wasn't a newspaper photographer. That's why in the picture, Lorenzo isn't looking at the camera. He's watching Raphael realize the truth. That same night, Maranzano ordered Luca's execution. Luca struck first. Part 8. The Frame. Russo leaned back in his chair, staring at the photo under the lamp's glow. So that was it. The quiet dinner, the 13th man, the betrayal caught in a flash of light. But something still didn't fit. He took a magnifying glass and studied the image again. In the crystal decanter near Raphael's elbow, a reflection shimmered, a faint, ghostly outline. Another man, a shadow, holding a gun. Another Part 9, Jory the Last Witness. Russo followed the lead to an old pawn shop in Queens. There, in a cracked box labeled Cataneo, he found the original camera. Inside the film compartment, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small roll of microfilm, still intact. It contained ledgers, addresses, and a note written in Italian. "He made me take the picture. He said it would make me immortal." He was right, signed, L. Cataneo. Russo smiled grimly. Immortal indeed. A ghost trapped forever in a photograph that betrayed an empire. Part 10. Epilogue. The photo now hangs in the archives of the NYPD, file number 11931M. Visitors walk past it without a second glance. Just another relic of the city's dark history. But if you look closely in the soft blur behind the men of honor, you can still see him, the 13th man. And if you stare too long, you might feel what Russo did that night. That somewhere behind the glass, the man's eyes still follow you, watching, waiting, as if the betrayal never ended. Part 1. The Road to Apalachin. By the fall of 1957, The American Mafia had become an invisible empire. It moved liquor, drugs, and money between Havana, New York, and Chicago, and controlled entire unions, docks, and city halls. Yet to the public, it did not exist. Officially, the FBI denied the existence of La Cosa Nostra. Unofficially, every cop in New York knew its name. And somewhere in the Catskill Mountains, a quiet man named Joseph Barbara, an unassuming soft drink bottler with a heart condition, was preparing his country estate for a gathering. He had rented extra tables, imported wine from Brooklyn, and ordered pounds of Italian sausage, fresh bread, and pastries. He told his neighbors it was a business luncheon. That much was true, though not in the way they imagined. By the morning of November 14, 1957, Cadillacs and Lincolns with license plates from as far away as New Jersey, Illinois, and California began to pull into Barbara's driveway. Inside those cars sat the kings of the underworld: Vito Genovese, Joseph Bonanno, Carlo Gambino, Santo Trafficante Jr., Joseph Profaci, Frank Costello, and emissaries from Buffalo, Cleveland, and Chicago. More than 60 men in dark suits, all businessmen in name only, had come together to redraw the lines of America's criminal map. They were there to crown a king. Part 2: The New Order. Just 2 years earlier, one of their own, Albert Anastasia, known as the Lord High Executioner, had turned the underworld into a private battlefield. His crew ran Murder, Inc., a corporation of death for hire. Anastasia was unpredictable, violent, and hungry for power. But Vito Genovese, the calculating Neapolitan Don, saw chaos as opportunity. He wanted to bring order to the mob and place himself at its center. Rumors had spread through every corner of the East Coast. Anastasia was slipping, his arrogance making him enemies. He had alienated Gambino, annoyed Bonanno, and insulted Costello. So Genovese decided the time had come. The Apalachin meeting was his stage, the moment he would stand above the old generation and proclaim a new hierarchy, a national syndicate, a commission of equals, with himself at the head. He didn't know the gods of fate had other plans. Part 3: The Watcher on McFall Road. While the Dons dined in Barbara's spacious living room, a state trooper named Edgar Croswell was parked a few miles away watching. Croswell wasn't part of any federal operation. He wasn't even supposed to be there that morning, but he had noticed something that didn't add up. A long line of luxury cars heading up a rural road toward a local bottling magnate's house. Strange, he thought. No one drives Cadillacs up here unless they're lost. He jotted down plate numbers: New Jersey, Illinois, Pennsylvania. When he ran them through dispatch, the names that came back were interesting. Most were men with long rap sheets and thinly veiled aliases. By noon, Croswell had set up a roadblock. He called for backup, and while the Dons feasted on antipasto and roasted lamb, the noose began to tighten. Part 4: The Gathering. Inside Barbara's house, the meeting had begun. Laughter echoed across the dining room. Cigars glowed like small embers in the dim air. Bonanno sat quietly, listening. Gambino whispered to Profaci. Genovese, ever theatrical, raised his glass. To unity, he said, to progress, to the future of our families. Salute, the others replied, almost in unison. The tone was calm, but beneath it, a silent struggle unfolded. Each man had come with his own ambitions, his own fears. Some wondered if they were safe even sitting in the same room. Others thought about what might happen if this peace council went wrong. Barbara, nervous and sweating, checked the clock every few minutes. He didn't know that outside, Police officers were already approaching the property. And then a young man ran into the room, pale-faced, gasping for breath. "Cops," he said. "The cops are outside." For a moment, silence. Then chaos. Part 5, The Great Escape. Expensive suits scattered like leaves in the wind. Some ran through the kitchen and out the back door. Others dove through hedges, leapt fences, sprinted across frozen fields in their patent leather shoes. Gambino slipped into the woods and vanished. Bonanno escaped through a cornfield, but dozens were not so lucky. Croswell's men surrounded the house. They stopped cars trying to flee the scene. One by one, they pulled out men whose names read like a who's who of organized crime. Name: John Montana. "What business you in, Mr. Montana?" "Olive oil." Another claimed to be a funeral director, another a cheese importer, another a clothing salesman. In reality, they were the bosses of New York, Buffalo, Tampa, and Chicago. Men who had ordered murders with a nod and made fortunes with a handshake. By sunset, over 60 mobsters had been detained or questioned. Newspapers called it the Great Mafia Roundup. Part 6, The Fallout. For decades, J. Edgar Hoover had insisted there was no such thing as the Mafia. After Apalachin, that lie was dead. Photographs of expensive cars parked outside Barbara's estate filled the morning papers. Names once whispered in fear were suddenly headlines. Vito Genovese, Joseph Bonanno, Carlo Gambino, Frank Costello, Santo Trafficante. Junior America for the first time saw the Mafia not as folklore, but as an institution. The meeting that was meant to unify the families had instead exposed them. Barbara was finished. The FBI raided his businesses and seized his records. Genovese was arrested soon after on narcotics charges. Anastasia, the executioner, would be shot to death in a barber's chair that very same year. The entire order of the underworld began to shift, like a deck of cards dropped in the wind. Part 7, The Silent War. In the months after Apalachin, paranoia gripped the mob. Every conversation felt like it had ears. Every friend looked like a potential informant. Bonanno went into hiding. Gambino grew cautious, quiet, strategic, waiting for the right time to claim what was left. The FBI, newly emboldened, launched Operation Top Hat, tracking family hierarchies and wiretapping payphones. Meanwhile, Genovese, humiliated but unbroken, tried to salvage his power. He called Apalachin a misunderstanding, blaming Barbara's poor planning, but the damage was done. In private, Bonanno was said to have told an associate, "We survived Capone. We survived Maranzano. But this will kill us slowly," and he was right. The Mafia's greatest strength had always been its invisibility. Now the curtain was gone. Part 8, The Betrayal. Years later, whispers circulated that someone inside the meeting had tipped off the police. Some said it was a local who noticed all the Cadillacs. Others claimed that one of Genovese's own men, secretly loyal to Gambino, had arranged it, knowing that public exposure would ruin Vito's credibility. Genovese never discovered the truth, but he never stopped searching for the traitor. In 1959, 2 years later, he was convicted on drug trafficking charges. After a friend he trusted testified against him in court, he would die in federal prison. Some said it was justice. Others called it poetic. Part 9, The Last Photograph. In the archives of the New York State Police, there's a single black and white photograph. Rows of parked cars outside a rural house, November 1957. The men are not visible, but their shadows stretch across the grass. frozen forever in that quiet moment before everything fell apart. The photograph looks peaceful, even mundane, a country estate under a cloudy sky. But if you know the story, you can almost hear the tension in the air. You can almost smell the cigar smoke, hear the engines idling, feel the weight of the empire collapsing under its own secrecy. That photograph marked the beginning of the end, the moment when the mafia stepped unwillingly into the light. Part 10, Epilogue. Decades later, FBI historians would call the Apalachin meeting the single most important turning point in organized crime history. It didn't destroy the mafia overnight, nothing could, but it shattered its myth of invisibility. It gave the government proof, the press a story, and the public a glimpse into a secret world of power, blood, and brotherhood. And though new generations would rise, Gambino, Gotti, the Commission, the ghosts of that day in 1957 still linger. Because in the end, the mafia was undone not by bullets or betrayal, but by something far more dangerous: exposure. The sunlight that crept into Joseph Barber's backyard that morning never left. And for men who lived in the shadows, that was the cruelest fate of all. He lived the rest of his life under protection, far from Sicily, but his words remained, as a wound and a warning. Because in a land built on silence, one voice was enough to make the whole world listen.